Hey, what's up? My name is August. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about a group of guys that I just love. And this is a certain group of guys known as the Replacements. Most known for really just not giving a fuck and unapologetically always being themselves. Making the type of music that they wanted to, as they were sort of pioneers of the alternative rock genre as a whole. And they took a lot of inspiration from early punk bands like the Sex Pistols or the Buzzcocks. The Replacements music has always spoken to me, and I think I've always been very impressed by their ability to balance drunken yelling with genuinely thought-provoking lyrics that are well written. So today I wanted to share some of that love for the Replacements by talking about each and every one of their albums and releases and ranking them. And doing this, we'll be talking about why they're good or bad, why are they ranked where they are, and them in relation to each other, blah, blah, blah. Just got a text. And let's just so we can lay down some ground rules considering how much shit there is out there of this band. I'll be including all studio albums, live performances, any other type of unreleased things, and also singles as long as the songs are not already on other albums. This will not include deluxe editions, re-releases, compilations, or singles of songs that are already on other albums. I'm gonna be covering a lot of grounds because a decent amount of these weren't even necessarily officially released. They're just things that I have found. But with that out of the way, let's just get straight into this. Give me just a moment. Last place, number 17, is going to go to All Shook Down. All Shook Down is their final album and was practically just a Paul Westerberg solo album. Essentially what happened was Paul wrote and recorded a bunch of these songs and brought on some random featuring musicians, and I'm sure that actually the rest of the band was involved in some of it, but he was advised to release it as a Replacements album. I think it's possible that would have not been released as a Replacements album. Why is this so low? This is a pretty great example of their unfortunate downfall. I think it's also a great example of why Paul Westerberg solo, although he's a very talented songwriter and great performer, is just not, it's really missing some of the magic without the rest of the band around. And I don't think that's not just like a thing in my head as a fan of the previous stuff or just based on knowing that the rest of the band isn't in this. There is a magic that was there in the previous albums that is truly missing. I don't think all of the songs are that good. I don't even know how to describe what, it reminds me of why I don't like some of his solo stuff, and I think it's because it just very slightly, almost the entire album, it leans too hard into this produced sound that, although there are some songs with great lyrics, like Sadly Beautiful or The Last, I think those two are the real highlights of the album, it's missing the rawness and punk sound that they used to have. I don't want to sound like the type of fan who's just saying, oh, well, if they're not doing the same thing they did for the first two albums, it fucking sucks. But I just think that when you try and do this produced sort of semi-acoustic sound where it doesn't even sound like all of the band is there, it's not going to come out sounding very good. So, I don't know, which is why a song like Merry Go Round, Happy Town and Merry Go Round lean too far into this, poppy edge. So, and it loses so much of the good sound that the previous albums had. I don't hate it. I'd still give it maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10. I think, maybe a 6 out of 10 is as low as their stuff goes as far as rating goes. But it still is not half as strong as their earlier stuff. Coming in at number 16, we got the live recording known as the Farewell Gig. So this was, to my knowledge, considering the name of it, their, last live performance that they played at some big stadium in, I think, Chicago. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I first started listening to this, I'm like, yeah, okay, it's not that bad. They got a big crowd. But as soon as I started playing a song from, it was either, I think, Don't Tell a Soul or All Shook Down, whichever one they played a song from first, I was like, ugh. And I realized that when you get late enough into their career, basically just post Don't Tell a Soul, if you listen to any live recordings, you're going to have to deal with hearing the far inferior songs to, any other stuff prior to Don't Tell a Soul. Which I think brought it down a bit. In there, okay, they're performing Bastards of Young. They're performing I Will Dare. They're performing Nightclub Jitters. Literally any of the songs off of their first 6 albums. And then you get, them performing, I don't know, Back to Back or Will Inherit the Earth, and you're like, dude, really? I know you're, there's no way you weren't gonna play this stuff at a live show, but it's could you not have skipped those ones? Also, from my memory of this live show recording, this is probably one of the most like boring and normal, like sober sounding recordings. It's a really weird way to negatively describe a concert, but if you're familiar with how live show recordings of the replacements go, this one feels so weak and like so much less fun than something like The Shit Hits the Fans, where you have them clearly super wasted, playing half-assed cover songs and like doing crazy shit like that. Whereas on this one, it's like, you know, it's almost like they've become the industry standard musicians that they didn't want to, and they're just playing what they're expected to. That's what I remember most of this one feeling like. That makes this my least favorite live show recording of theirs. Too bad. Up next to the number 15 spot, we got For Sale, live at Maxwell's. Yeah, this is like a recording of one of their live shows from like the 80s that didn't get released on Spotify till like a few years ago. From here on out, we get into territory of stuff that's overall pretty strong. Mostly at least 7 out of 10s. They play a really great set in this one. It's very straightforward. It's them playing all of their stuff they've actually written well. It's minus the goofy covers, but they still, I mean, you hear their discussions and you hear them getting into the songs. It still feels like the replacements' antics are separate, and plus it's not ruined by the fact that some of their inferior songs from the later albums have to be played. Considering this was played pre Don't Tell a Soul, was also played pre Pleased to Meet Me, so there's none of the amazing tracks off that album. Too bad, but I mean, there's plenty of good pre Pleased to Meet Me live show recording. This is an example of it. Overall, I guess I consider this, maybe a 7 out of 10, maybe an 8, maybe like a generous 8, where it's a not too sober, not too out of hand though, recording of these guys just playing some of the stuff that they're actually known for and playing it well, because when they're not too wasted, they're great stage performers. At number 14, we got the single Songs for Slim Dunlap. Wait, what? I thought he died. This is a collection of songs that wasn't released until 2013. Maxwell and Jensen.
How's it going?
Nothing much, man.
What are you working on?
Whoa, I had to change locations. But yeah, Songs for Slim was released and recorded in, I believe, around 2013, which I think is right around the time that the Replacements actually had a reunion tour. I just found out online that this was made to benefit Slim Dunlap, their former drummer, from, I believe, I want to say, Pleased to Meet Me to All Shook Down, who had just suffered from a stroke, which is actually very nice. And what I think is even better is, like, the songs, I think, are really enjoyable. A lot of them have a fun, upbeat sound, and although don't lean fully into the screaming punk edge that the Replacements had in their earlier stuff, and like something like Sorry Ma, it still has this Replacements sound through both the production value and just the tempo of the songs with the loud guitars, the percussive sound. Feels like a bunch of fun tracks, and they experiment with a bunch of different sounds. Some of it sounds almost country-esque. I don't know if it's the right way to describe it. I think there's one track that almost sounds electronic. But it's a great collection of fun songs that strike the perfect balance between still feeling like the Replacements, but also offering just a little bit of variety with the type of songs that they choose to write. Then at number 13 is their performance live at First Avenue, January 22nd, 1986. This is an overall solid performance, and again, pre-Don't Tell a Soul, so it's pretty great. Typical energy that the Replacements have is there. This feels like they're all getting wasted on stage. And this is, again, to me, although not their most memorable live performance, I think a great balance between them doing goofy cover songs, a few maybe actually good cover songs, stretch across a whole wide variety of different bands and eras. And also just, doing a good job performing their own stuff. You see right there? It's Tommy Stinson. Coming in at number 12 is their performance live in Rotterdam, Holland, 1991. This one is especially fun because I watched a video of this one. There's a video to accompany this. This is them just doing a good job playing the normal songs. But there are numerous memorable parts, such as like towards the end, Paul jumps down into the crowd and he gets up on stage and lays on the stage. And maybe it's the visual accompaniment that helped, but I think this is another pretty perfect example of that. And towards the end, it gets especially more fun with the antics the band gets into. Coming in at number 11 is Don't Tell a Soul. Some people might be kind of surprised that I didn't put this ridiculously low or below All Shook Down. I genuinely think that there's more good songwriting on this album than you would realize if you listen to the original release of it. And I think if anything, that's proven through listening to the re-released Dead Man's Pop. And I know I said I was not going to include any of those re-releases or new remixes, whatever you want to call them, in this video. But I think it's worth considering that Dead Man's Pop feels like such a drastically different and drastically superior remix of these songs that you realize that there's quite a few songs like Portland W or even Aching to Be, maybe even like Talent Show is a pretty fun one. So a lot of these songs have a catchy tune or have lyrics that are enjoyable, or have lyrics that, to some extent, do remind me of something like Tim or Pleased to Meet Me. And really, I think this, unfortunately, all of that gets lost in the shitty, mainstream, dated 80s sounding production of the original version. Which is a shame, because if these songs were as well produced as they were in the Dead Man's Pop re-release when the album originally came out, I genuinely believe that it could have gotten a better reception at the time. Or if that were the first version I listened to, I would have had a better impression of it, rather than it being the butt of the joke whenever I'm talking about the replacements. And admittedly, for me, it still is, because the production value and the sound of the original one brings it down just that much. But really, when you look at just the songwriting and also the quality of the song's production aside, it's better than people would want to think. Coming on down to number 10, we got the performance live at a place called Fitzgerald's in Houston, like August of 1983, some point in 1983. Again, this is, I don't really want to, when it comes to the live performances that didn't really stand out to me, there's not really much of a point in droning on about them. So, oh, hey, look, it's Chris Mars. It's not a point in droning on about them, since I'm going to say the same thing, at least about the ones I liked. Yeah, this is them having a good time. They balance playing some goofy cover songs with passionately performing the songs that they wrote. And guess what? This one's no different. I guess the only thing is this one's early on enough where a lot of their early stuff is enjoyable, but just when it's when a live performance is pre-Let It Be, it's not quite as strong, I gotta admit. But this is still really a fun one to listen. Next one is live performance on 7th Street, or like Incident on 7th Street as it may be known, from, I want to say, as early as like 1981. I like this one because so early on, where the band seems so full of energy, and this feels like we're seeing them in their rawest form, and we see them, while they're still youthful, just playing things that are mostly, if not entirely, just off of their debut album, Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash. But that's kind of what I love about it. It's simple. They really only have one album, or maybe there's a bit off of like Stink, I don't know. But if I remember correctly, they really only have one album to stick to. So this whole performance really embodies the sort of youthful, rebellious sound of that first album. And they get really into performing all these songs. And I think even if their first album isn't necessarily their best one, or there's a lot of material that they didn't have yet to perform, there's something to say about the sort of youthfulness of seeing one of their earliest performances. For number 8, we have this performance I found on YouTube, live in New York in 1984. So this is one of my favorite one of their live performances, because it was performed at a pretty good time. It was post Let It Be, so they had 4 albums worth of incredible material to perform with. But there's also like a surprising amount of like good cover songs, not even goofy ones, not even half-assed ones, not ones where it's like, yeah, it's funny because they use this song with the wrong lyrics like they usually do, which when they did that, I think it was pretty funny. But for this one, there's a lot of legitimately enjoyable covers of like, I like the one I did of, what's it called, Lottie Miss Claudie, or probably my all-time favorite one from this live recording, and one of my favorite cover songs I've ever done, is Easier Said Than Done by the Essex. I think Paul performs it so well for some reason. He just gets so into it. So if anything, this one stands out because this has the most actually good cover songs, which, although you might come across a few good ones or even funny ones in other live show recordings, I don't think you'll get quite as many as you do here. Now, the way in which I order these next two might be controversial. I will admit, it's Bob Stinson. But this is just my take. Take it or leave it. Number 7, Hootenanny. As much as I usually, if I'm talking about the replacements in general, or they're just going over their discography vaguely, I will say their first 6 albums are all pretty incredible. I do stand by that, but out of all of those, Hootenanny is like the one that I've listened to least. I don't really know why. I think they keep around their like, sort of punk sound and their classic sound, and there's some good experimentation to be appreciated. Like, Within Your Reach leans into this weird, I don't even know how to describe it. I want to say electronic, but I don't think that's the right way to describe it. It has this weird filter on the guitar, which I think is very interesting. There's a very similar, like, almost electronic futuristic vibe on the song Willpower. And yeah, I do think those are both very interesting. The titular song, Hootenanny, which is also the first track, is pretty fantastic. I mean, it's fun. It's a perfect way to go into the album. It's just like these guys dicking around, and I think it's great. Take Me Down to the Hospital, another like just classic replacement sounding punky song. I think by far the best song off this album is Color Me Impressed. I mean, it's the perfect blend of their punk sensibilities with actually good lyrics and just a general catchy sound. But overall, it's, for some reason or another, despite being one of the classic, like, first few albums, still is the one I think about least. Coming in at number 6 and/or 5 is The Shit Hits the Fans. Yet another live show recording, and I'm a pretty big fan of this one, I gotta admit. I think this one is, from what I remember, one of the ones where they feel perhaps the most drunk, and it's a very interesting mixture of both, like, them doing an okay job performing their normal songs, and then also just some hysterical, goofy covers. And this feels the most, like, truly radiates their live energy. Like, they're just, I mean, they're totally dicking around, for lack of a better word. You know what I mean? I also think this one's interesting because the story behind it, a random person in the audience was recording on a cassette tape. Mid-recording, got it confiscated. Then the band decided to sell copies of it, which I think is just brilliant. Now we're down to the top 5 or 4. I didn't keep good track of this and I fucked something up. Coming in at number 5, we have Stink. Stink feels like something in the vein of their debut album, Sorry Ma, I Take Out the Trash. It's another album that, for the most part, is these loud, punky songs that just say, fuck authority, we'll do what we want, you know, with titles like Kids Don't Follow, or Fuck School, or Goddamn Job. But they're all different and have memorable tunes, and I think they embrace that in a fantastic way. I think the most emotional one is what I'd call like the Johnny's Gonna Die of the album, is Go. I think Go is a fantastic song because it still goes a little bit hard on percussiveness and being a rock song. It's not like a slow acoustic ballad, but it still is a very emotionally charged song and is less mindless punk. It's more, get the fuck out of this relationship. This is a serious song, isn't it? With a track like Go, I think it all ties it together. It's not just loud, punky nonsense. There's also a heart to it. But if there's anything that shows the heart of the album most, it is a song that was very unfortunately left to be only a bonus track. And that's very upsetting, because it's a great song. A little song called You're Getting Married. You're Getting Married is a song that basically only exists in this like demo form. So there's a very rough, raw sound to it that just sounds like Paul Westerberg recording it in his house or something. And to me, it's a really, really beautiful, underrated song about the idea of committing to something that you're clearly not ready for. Changing your life in a way that you're just not yet prepared to take on. And the lo-fi sound of it, along with Paul Westerberg's performance, where towards the end he gets super into it and sounds very emotional about it. In fact, the whole time it sounds like he's performing this in a very emotional way, as if it's a personal song. Really aids the song, and it's one of the most underrated replacement songs by far. You're Getting Married. I really advise you check it out. But yeah, Stink is a fantastic follow-up to Sorry Ma, where it sort of replicates the punk-ish sound of that album, but I'd say still manages to stand on its own. And also, I'm assuming the name and album cover has to be inspired by Spunk by the Sex Pistols, right? I'm not crazy, right? Coming in at number 4, we got Pleased to Meet Me. Pleased to Meet Me is a great album that leans into a sort of higher production sound and a little bit less of the mindless punk shit, while still feeling like a Replacements album. This is the perfect balance between sounding a bit more produced, but not sounding like a total sellout album. The album has a wide range of different types of songs and different, emotional feels throughout said songs. You have songs that go a little harder, like Alex Chilton, Nevermind, Shooting Dirty Pool. I think these are all wonderful songs that feel a little bit more, it's like the perfect balance between the punk sound of something like Gary's Got a Boner from Let It Be, and the poppier sound of something like A Little Mascara or Left of the Dial, where it's not full-on drunken yelling, although that can be great. It is a somewhat louder song that still feels rock and roll, while still having some emotion or at least thoughtful lyrics behind it. Nightclub Jitters is one of the most unique songs in the whole album, because it is most likely the only time the Replacements have ever made a song that's like club jazz music. But it's a catchy club jazz song, so it just being there sort of adds some pop to the album. The album ends incredibly with two of my favorite tracks off of it. Skyway, which is a great, like, sort of the band recording to the acoustic sound of something like Here Comes a Regular, or If Only You Were Lonely, which is a bonus song from Sorry Ma, where it just sounds like it's a very emotional song about someone who's thinking of this one other person and wishes they could connect to one another, but they probably won't. And it's so beautifully performed. It's just Paul Westerberg and his acoustic guitar for the most part. And it's just him delivering a very sadly emotional performance. And then the album ends with what is easily a contender for my favorite replacement song of all time, Can't Hardly Wait. A song with a poppy, upbeat sound mixed with these really beautiful lyrics about longing for a loved one that you've been away from for a long time, and this feeling of anticipation to be back somewhere where you haven't for a long time. And, you know, when I listened to this song when I drove back home at the end of the last school year or something like that, or whenever I'd be in anticipation of something coming up in the future, and whether it be in that scenario or out of that scenario, it reminds me of that whole feeling, and it's always been an incredibly emotionally moving song in that, like, way. I think longing for something that you've had in the past, or somewhere that you used to live, or longing for that connection to a person that maybe you haven't seen or heard from in a long time, is a feeling that in some way, in some form, everyone can relate to. And this song conveys it so brilliantly. There's really no way, again, I'm not a music expert necessarily. I feel like I know I've been doing a pretty good job at least explaining how I think each song sounds. But there's a sound to this whole song that I can't even explain that sounds like both sentimental and just straight up happy, and in some ways bittersweet. And I think that's because just about every element of the song and every part of the band comes together to make one of the most emotionally moving songs that the band has ever made. So sorry for that tangent, but that's so, like, I adore that song so much to a point where it kind of needed its own section. So now we are coming down to the top three, the big three. What could these possibly be? Well, if you're familiar enough with if you're familiar enough with the band, you know what they are. But let's find out. Number 3, Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash. This is the band's debut album, and I'm gonna keep it real and say one big reason I like this is because having listened to their discography in order, this is the first thing of theirs I listened to. So it's literally what got me into the band. So it will almost forever have that emotional connection. I mean, this is, you know, them in their early time, so you can kind of still imagine them just being a band in their basement or garage, however you want to think of that. The best way to describe a majority of this album is it feels like you're there with them. It feels like you're just watching these guys who, again, are just doing their own thing, don't really give a fuck about getting big in the industry, seemingly, and they're just having a good time. They're playing loud music that expresses how they feel, or it doesn't. You know, maybe it's stupid. The most notable times where it slows down is the song Johnny's Gonna Die, which is an absolutely beautiful song that, if I'm remembering correctly, Johnny speaks about the lead singer of some actual band. Ah, yes, Johnny Thunders. Talking about how he died at a young age, and it's a rather sad song, not only alone, but also knowing the context. The other standout of this album that's, like, really emotional is If Only You Were Lonely. It's another song that, like You're Getting Married, was left to only be a bonus track, and barely anyone talks about it. And I think that should be considered a damn crime, because this song is beautiful. It's a simple acoustic ballad for this guy who's just longing for a romantic connection, and he's clearly projecting that onto some person he doesn't even know. But, you know, when he thinks that person, or maybe even knows that person, is not someone who he can be with, he just feels completely broken. And it's such a simple and well-performed version of that song that even though the whole idea of, you know, if only you were lonely, it sounds like a total emo incel song. And I get why that might be the assumption you make. But it's the emotion that Paul Westerberg brings to it here is just one of a kind. And if anything, I think my personal favorite version is a version that is on one of the deluxe editions, which is like a studio demo outtake version of it. Because and I can play a little bit for you guys. The quality of it is atrocious to a point where it literally adds to the rawness of it. And it's just some point it seems like this is Paul just screaming, and considering him repeatedly stopping and coughing, he may or may not be drunk or hungover. But this is him recording this song. Maybe he was improvising it, maybe it's how he actually felt. But it completely conveys the raw emotions of feeling completely alone, just feeling like a total fucking loser, dude. Check it out. Check it out. Can I get copyright claim for this? Yeah, I showed some of my friends this version of the song, and they were just like totally cringing, like physically repulsed at the moments where the audio peaks. But I think those are the best because it's just this guy just going on this ballad of God. I just, uh, dude, I need romantic connection, or maybe just you, maybe you just need sex. Who knows? But yeah, Sorry I Forgot to Take Out the Trash is perhaps the rawest version of the Replacements, and it totally shows their spirit as a band. This leads us to the top two. And again, this is a situation where if you're a diehard fan, you know which two these are. But I want to say in advance, these are basically both, at least almost equally incredible. And I usually consider them both to be contenders for that number one spot. So I think that's worth saying. Hey, it's Paul Westerberg. So coming in at number two is Tim. Tim is a really, really fucking incredible album. After their last four albums, this somehow just, to me at least, feels like their most mature sounding album up to that point. Because they go from having consistently at least a few songs that lean entirely into just being loud and drunken and fuck yeah. They reel it back a bit into having more like thought-provoking songwriting. Or more relaxed songs where even the ones that are a bit louder sound, in the best way possible, a little bit more poppy than they do punky. But that's not a bad thing, it just means it's a reeled back version of their louder, bigger, faster songs. When it comes to their poppy songs, you have Hold My Life, Kiss Me on the Bus, Little Mascara, or Left of the Dow, which might be the best of that group of songs. Which I think all are super fun and have an incredibly memorable tune. And then there's also the songs that I consider two of the main standouts, Waitress in the Sky and Here Comes a Regular. And I think those are both arguably like the most acoustic songs, where Waitress in the Sky is a humorous take of the entitlement of some customers, specifically those who ride planes. And Here Comes a Regular is an absolutely heartbreaking song that's just it's basically just Paul Westerberg looking into the future saying, this might be what I become if this continues, a lonely drunk. And then really, the one other standout when it comes to the slower songs is Swingin' Party. That's an obvious one. It's one of their most popular ones. It's an incredible song about stage fright and almost explains why exactly the Replacements drink before they go on stage, why they do what they do, and the fact that they're more afraid than they want to let on. But it's a very nice song, and in some ways, despite the fact that it's about stage fright, it's one that's a bit relaxing too. If I had to pick a favorite song off this album, or a song to drone on about, it would probably be Bastards of Young. Why isn't it playing? Bastards of Young is almost Bastards of Young is like the perfect balance between their thought-provoking lyrics and a song that otherwise sounds a little bit more loud and mindless. But to me, it's also a perfect representation of how their Replacements probably saw themselves. They were these guys that before making a band probably felt, pretty lost in life. And I know a lot of them dealt with, didn't have the greatest relationships with their parents. And even when they did start making music, it's the type of thing that got heavily frowned upon by older generations, and they probably thought it was stupid. This isn't them sort of being like, well, listen, we may be a generation that feels completely lost, and we don't really know how to label ourselves, blah, 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 but we're doing our own thing. And so, even if we are in some ways bastards, metaphorically speaking, even if our dads were around, we're going to embrace our youthfulness. This is an excellent song about generational divide. So yeah, Tim is an album that I think I'd be, on any day, fully willing to give a 10 out of 10. I love it. Again, it's a total contender for number one. Changed my life. Thank you, Tim. Are you guys ready for number one? Because this shit's the real deal. I could talk about this shit for hours for the rest of my life. My favorite Replacements album. That's right. The one I think is best. The one I hold, or at least currently, the one I hold in the highest regard. This is bad, I'll start over. So, okay. Oh yeah. Number one. No, let's let it be. The Replacements' fourth studio album is arguably their magnum opus. A perfect balance of slow songs, somewhat softer songs, and songs that just go full punk, full ear-blasting bullshit, that is produced really incredibly, is full of incredible lyrics and songwriting, and even upon closer inspection has a very fascinating narrative to it. Let It Be truly is a contender for the greatest rock album of all time. Starting off with I Will Dare puts you perfectly into this sort of softer but still upbeat sound of an Song that is incredibly catchy, it starts out with a fantastic chord progression, followed up by the equally upbeat Favorite Thing, and then hits you with We're Coming Out. That's sort of the difference you see between the songs that feel a little bit more full-on punk and the songs that feel a little bit more reeled back. I Will Dare and Favorite Thing, and I guess maybe Unsatisfied could be considered the more reeled back ones. And then you have, We're Coming Out, Tommy Gets His Tonsils Out, or Gary's Got a Boner, all feel very full punk. And it's nice to see that the energy that they're almost known for, of just sort of being like almost just these rebellious young kids, sort of, is still present, even in an album that is full of thought-provoking songwriting. But yeah, this is an album where I can't help but just break down the songs that are really great. Just to go song by song, I want to start with Androgynous. This song emotionally moves me in a way that literally no other song could, every single individual time that I hear it. And I think that's because that soft piano mixed with Paul Westerberg's very sincere performance makes this not only an incredible sounding song, but also an incredibly, incredibly moving song that speaks in support of a lot of the LGBTQ community and of being queer or of being transgender, genderqueer, etc. And it's also, the song is astonishingly ahead of its time. The performance mixed with, again, the singing and lyrics are such a sincere way of saying, accept everyone, These people are doing their own thing. These people should be loved the way everyone else is. Let them be who they want to be. Senior Video is a rather interesting track. It's not a slow song, but it's a little bit more drawn back than, say, Tommy Gets His Tonsils Out. And it's an interesting song that's mostly a catchy instrumental, but by the end of it is basically a song speaking against all the fake rockers and all the industry sellouts. As the main lyrics, so some of these are repeated, but practically the only lyrics in the song are Senior Video, the phony rock and roll, we don't want to know, Senior Video. This is a perfect representation of how not only were they specifically against making music videos, this band, but they're also so anti-sellout. And the idea being they don't ever want to be these fake rock and roll thing. They want to actually do their own thing, and they want to be real. 16 Blue is an incredible song about the under-talked about hardships of being in your teenage years. The idea that there are many things you are still figuring out, and you're not understood by others, whether it be others your age or others older than you. And it's a time full of many questions that go unanswered. The lyrics in the song portray the hardships of being that age, maybe like being in like high school, that in a way that no other song does, or any other piece of art that I've really ever seen manages to do. And in that way, I think the song is just really beautiful. My two favorite tracks off of the album are probably Answering Machine and Unsatisfied. Answering Machine is a great example of leaning into the loudness of some of their punkier stuff, while also bringing 100% when it comes to the emotional performance. It's an emotional song about longing for someone that you lost or let go of. It's a song that feels very accurate when it comes to the feeling of getting over a breakup. Just sitting around feeling lonely, and you want to say something to this person, or you want to express your misery, or you want to be able to talk to them again, to be back with them. But you can't. That, or more specifically, as the song directly conveys, this song is also about the feeling of being so far away and maybe out of communication with someone that you love, to a point where it hurts. As Paul says, how do you say I'm lonely to an answering machine? I think his insightful lyrics mixed with his bringing it all when it comes to the emotional performance, when the majority of it sounds like he's literally just yelling out, like, why? Really makes it an incredible song. Unsatisfied is another contender for my favorite replacement song of all time. It's a song with an incredible guitar part, an incredible performance from Paul Westerberg, and lyrics that are incredible in a way that they also manage to be so universal. Paul, I believe, has opened up about how this song was mainly about him feeling unsatisfied in his art, and feeling like he was so heavily restricted when it come to making songs and writing stuff, and the band as a whole. But these lyrics feel vague enough that it could be about literally anything. Are you unsatisfied and you don't know why? Are you unsatisfied in a relationship? For whatever reason you are unsatisfied, which, let's be honest, we oftentimes all are, this song is just incredibly emotionally moving for anyone in any moment. As far as how it sounds, I don't know what's better. The really incredible guitar part, or Paul Westerberg, again, bringing a performance that I might say has more heart in it than Answering Machine, to a point where, in the best way possible, it sounds less and less like he's singing and like he's just crying out. Like when he recorded this was just him screaming about his total dissatisfaction. Let It Be is a complete and total masterpiece, and is an album that I'll revisit time and time again, and is arguably a perfect album. So, yeah, that's my ranking video on the Replacements, and I think also makes it the first Replacements video I've ever made, which is surprising, but I haven't had much time to make videos at all recently, so that's probably why. Tell me how wrong I was in the comments, or if you'd like to discuss other things related to the band. And drop all that shit in the comments. I could talk about these guys for hours. If you want to discuss anything else, that's also what the comment section is for. If you like this video, subscribe. If you didn't like it, subscribe. And yeah, I'll probably do another video related to them. The next video I want to do is either like a bracket of all their songs to find out which one I would wind up winning, or a song in which I break down what I believe to be the narrative of Let It Be, which is a video I've been cooking up in my head. Let me know if you want any other Replacements inspired content, or drop ideas for other videos. I might do them, I might not. I will if you subscribe. That's all, man. Rest in peace, Bob Stinson, and thank you to the Replacements for making these songs and these albums that have changed my life so much. So that's everything. I'll see you guys later.
And I wish you was lonely. Yeah.